some people like watching skateboarding videos where they can do the trick, and other people like watching them when they fall off and crash. And I think I'm more of the watching people fall and crash type of person, and I want to be that kind of actor.
But that's the brilliance. That's the brilliance. That is the best performance. The best performance is the one where they just ride the line. You know what I mean? Where it's just, whoa, it could just tip over this way or that way, and it's just going to be a disaster. But when you, it looks like you're going to fall, I think that's where the best performances are.
The one who bombs or gets as close to bombing as possible.
From movie to movie, do you remember the process, or do you shed that experience and feel like you're starting from scratch every time?
I mean, yeah, definitely. Every single time I start a movie, I just feel like I have no idea how to act. Like, it's just kind of, it only really seems to come together. You need the adrenaline of kind of, yeah, I think you need to feel like a total failure. You feel your absolute worst the day before.
Yeah.
Your kind of confidence falls out. But I remember standing on the porch of the church, and there was just this like lovely breeze going past, and we were doing the scene, putting the bicycle in the boot in the trunk of the car, and you just suddenly, like, it's weird. It only seems to come to you like when it needs to. Like you that first morning or the first day, and it's like, oh, just suddenly all the pieces suddenly come together, and you have this amazing feeling of calm afterwards, which, like, you know, your mind just totally clears. It's lovely.
One of my favorite scenes is that speech that you give where you're talking about delusions.
Delusions! Blaspheming the Lord in your mind and in your heart.
My memory of it was like we just kept pushing it. And I think at one point I was like, look, just go as far as you want to go with this. You can't go far enough.
I love those speeches. I think I've always wanted to do it. There's something about playing a preacher. I mean, I think even around for years before this part even came along, I'd been asking to kind of try and find some kind of preacher role. I just think they're really, there's just something fascinating about them. Playing a part where they truly believe what they're saying. I mean, it's always kind of fun, especially when they're lying.
How could I be the daddy when all we done is spent time with the Lord?
And I remember a lot of the process of working with you avoiding the dialect coach and then showing up to set very much in character. There was nothing precious, but you had really arrived at something, and once you had arrived at it and felt confident in it, you were confident to show it and to discuss it.
I was just wandering around the city, just sort of learning the lines, and then I don't know what it is, there's just something about some pronunciations that just really tickle me, and I was just wandering around, and then I'd say something, and I was just recording things on my phone, kind of just making myself laugh, like just walking around the city. I mean, but there's only so many times you kind of have to be working with like a friend to be able to just be like, I just want to do this thing. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but like it's coming from somewhere. There were
early takes where you would say delusion, and then you would just crack up. No.
I try and go into each new project with, I'll have a kind of idea of how something would feel different, and how it, you know, so you can just encourage a physical feeling inside yourself. Like when I first read this, you know, there's something scary about it. There's a few lines. It goes back to being like a little kid in class and like saying, like wanting to say like the naughty thing. And like it's kind of this immature little part of you who thinks like, oh, there's something subversive to say.
But friends, poor soul, bringing them chicken livers and that beat up plate. Well, let's just say I'm inspired to preach on for a minute before we eat.
I remember Teagarden really standing out, and even though he's a pretty amoral, kind of narcissistic kind of monster in a lot of ways, he's also got a lot of energy. Like he's kind of, it really came off the page.
It was ruin me, man. You can understand that, can't you?
He's very, it's corporeal, the real word, the right word. Like he's very, very sensual. And there are like little mentions in the script of just, he's just pouring sweat and just eating fat and oil and this kind of just, there was something that really appealed to me, but he's just kind of fat and sweaty and just there's something, he's just consuming and just requires like heavy fuel to exist.
Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness.
There's something very exciting about it. It's one of my favorite things to watch. It's like those things about televangelists when they're kind of trying to justify why they have to buy private jets and stuff. I mean, it's always very entertaining to watch.
And that aspect of him that you mentioned, which is like key to the character and also what separates him from everybody else, is that he's not struggling. Like there's no internal conflict at play.
Did you figure some way to get rid of it? Because otherwise, it's gonna be you.
And also, he's someone who can forgive himself incredibly easily, which really makes him stand out. Like, no matter what he does, he's always in the right afterwards, and it's always something fun. I mean, I love at the end he just does a quick little prayer, and all is forgiven, everything just written off, and it's like, I mean, like the kind of his idea of faith really fits with the rest of how he lives his life. It's like you can do anything you want and just ask forgiveness right at the end in the last 2 seconds, and you're all good.
Have you shown yourselves as the Lord made you?
You're meaning my birthday soon.
No. To show yourself as the Lord made his first children is to truly turn yourself to him.
The danger with bad guys is that sometimes there's the inclination to try and redeem them. And then trying to redeem them somehow verges on justifying some of the things that they do. To embrace the villainy of it is where it needs to go.
I don't even think you have to redeem any character. Like half the time, I don't even think your character needs to have any kind of motivation or anything. It's just like it's sort of. I mean, I also like bad guys when it's kind of like I was watching Blue Velvet again the other day, and just kind of Frank Booth in Blue Velvet. It's just sort of, it's just at the energy is like what makes you you're interested in where the character goes.
Do you remember the scene the scene between you and Tom at the very end, which is such a like a kind of it's a very still scene. Like there's not a lot of movement. It's only two people sitting in this small church talking to each other, but we treated it almost like it was theater. Like, what's your memory of that scene, if you have any memory of it at all?
I don't think, other than the delusion scene, I'd only very briefly seen him in character, and so it was the first time I'd really seen his kind of righteous rage in this thing, and it kind of really pulled out. I remember realizing as Tom was doing the early parts of his sort of false confession.
One day I got this girl in my truck and I drove her out to the sticks and I had my way with her.
I was just thinking like, this should be turning Tea Garden on. This thing is literally like this thing. I hadn't really thought about it before, and I was like, oh, you should respond like lasciviously.
Don't you put up a fight?
It's super dark, the scene, but I just remember it's a fun scene. I mean, it's kind of it's kind of very, very well balanced. Tom's like really amazing in it, and like it's just like it was great to see him work. And it's a really hard part he's got as well, where you have to be sort of contained the whole time and like somehow have something pulsating out of you. I really liked having the fat suit on as well, because like just kind of doing about 30 takes of like falling over the pew actually really helped having fat belly just as a cushion.
But you really wanted to fly over the thing, so you were throwing yourself over the pew at the end of that scene.
Yeah, with stunts where you just have to hurt yourself, like I'm always I'm always like, yeah, no problem. Stunts where you have to look like you're really good at doing stuff is always a little bit of a problem for me.
The scene itself, I worked on that scene in some capacity almost every day, 8 months, every day. But we have to highlight that moment where he does that. As a director, you just like want to do justice to the thing that the actors have done in the movie, highlight that, but not lose the language of the scene, the grammar of the scene. The thing with that scene is it's very quiet in a way until it explodes. It's so much of like looks and the way that you lean and the way that you look in at him and the way that there's not a lot of action, but there's a lot of like shifts.
I remember there feeling a very, very good dynamic between the camera and both of us at the time. Like, it kind of felt very, very tight and concentrated. It's funny, like sometimes you can just feel that the camera's in exactly the right place and you're just like, oh, I know where my frame is. I know how to kind of perform within this thing. Sometimes you don't exactly know, where you're performing to. It's being created a lot in the edit. With that day, I remember feeling like every little push in, I could really feel, oh, you're really watching when we were doing stuff, because it just felt like it was very, very concentrated, and it's very satisfying. Like, because most of the time you just don't really feel that dynamic that much, the relationship with the camera that much. I definitely think as well there's something in just having fun with it. I mean, it took me a long time to realize that like acting, when I started acting, it's always really fun. And then when you start doing it professionally, it's terrifying and so competitive. It doesn't feel fun for a while. And I kind of, over the last few jobs, doing jobs like this, it's really fun. Like when you can kind of do scenes like this, when it's kind of, you really feel like you're like flying doing stuff, and you can't really fail at that point as well. If you've had a good time doing it, then that's all there is.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the Netflix Film Club channel to get our latest exclusive videos. Plus, hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.